listening to the House by the Video Store podcast.
There's no more room in hell. The dead will walk near.
We have such sights to show you.
I kick ass for the Lord!
Praise God! Give away!
Welcome to the House by the Video Store podcast. I'm your host, William, and joining me today will be Derek.
Hello.
And Sean.
Hello.
And on this episode, we'll be discussing the 1984 Brian De Palma film Body Double. Because I know Sean's wanting to get into some De Palma, and we haven't touched on his past movies so far.
This isn't like his best film and all, but it has some fun moments. So I was like, okay, this is a good one to just have some, like, at least some crazy scenes or some good scenes, you know, like kind of ones you will remember, you know, even if the film isn't, like I said, like his best at all. This is still one that I will put on occasionally just to watch.
Because I think that the De Palma film that I was the most acquainted with, just because of the way things fell and the age I was and stuff, was probably the first Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
Because it came out in the mid-90s when I was, like 96, 95, so I was like 10 or 11, and they had the Nintendo 64 game where you would have to go around and wear the mask and do all the stuff.
Remember the rocket launcher handgun?
Yeah, so I was like, I remember that stuff like was very much in pop culture and very much like hit at the right age for me to be into like action espionage stuff. But then of course, he also made movies like Carrie and
different each
Scarface and
decade kind of prior to that. It was Carrie, and then he hit with Scarface. Like those are his big ones. Untouchables was big, but it didn't have like the cultural touchstone I think that like Carrie and Scarface and Mission Impossible have had.
Yeah, so before we get into discussing Body Double, we can go through some recent news and things we've been watching. And the news, main things are just like something we've talked about on the podcast before is, the way the Resident Evil movies turned out, like Sony redoing those, trying to go a little bit more after what the games were and be a little bit more horror-based or not just these kind of sci-fi action-heavy films that they ended up making.
Yeah, that's what it's a lot of, sci-fi action.
And currently, Johan Roberts, so the director that did 47 Meters Down and Strangers Pray at Night, is the person they've tapped to work on doing a reboot of Resident Evil. And I know that they have been talking about maybe Resident Evil 7 being more the basis for what they're doing in terms of the tone and what they're going to go for. But, Resident Evil to me was always one of those things where instead of doing a movie, it's almost something you could do as like a type of series, like take The Haunting of Hill House or something as inspiration.
That's what they say.
And then just do a series because there's a lot of material there to mine. But I think once...
Yeah, it doesn't need to be as expensive as those movies.
Because once you get to the point that you have somebody slow motion Matrix dodging a rocket launched by a monster that then drop kicks and fights somebody in the sky,
then that means you're playing Resident Evil 6.
Yeah.
Because once you get to a certain point with those films,
or 5.
you can go back and listen to a review of the first one, but to me, just the first one, I went and saw it as like expecting something that was more horror based, like in the mansion and then, they created the character of Alice. That's fine. Sometimes you do create new characters because if you just did verbatim what was in the games, a lot of those costumes and stuff are ridiculous.
I think in the first one more so than... I don't know. You could probably have people dressed pretty similar to they are in the actual game. It wouldn't be that weird because it's just kind of typical...
you can always just update the outfits. But it was... Yeah, I don't know. It's... I would have liked to have heard the reasoning why they decided to... I guess the reason is when you play that game, you go in and it's a mystery and you don't know what you're supposed to do or where you're supposed to go. And that was the fun of playing the game, was just the exploration. In a movie, a lot of times if you're making a film, a more straightforward film, you need to go in where the characters have a set goal in action. And when they went in there, the set goal was to shut down the hive. You know what I mean? Like they had a role.
Well, I think
they had a person. Like the first game was all a mystery. And I think for mainstream appeal, they knew the audience going to see it, younger audience, they needed something that, was highly, I guess, I don't say stereotypical, but formulaic. And it's like, okay, look, here's the video. We got some Marine dudes or whatever going in, Special Forces guys going in, going to be shooting zombies, and they got to shut down this thing. Like, that's the easy plot.
Well,
to
I think
follow.
it was also to some extent that it was a cheaper approach, having it set in this underground hive, so it's all essentially like on pre-existing sets, and then they kind of recycled that idea for Aliens versus Predator.
It's just so weird too. I mean, I
they're
guess
the same movie.
I guess maybe budget was a big
director.
thing, but like you watch the special features on it, and Paul W.S. Anderson made like all the actors or actresses play the game,
Which makes
all the
no
way through,
sense.
or watch videotapes if they couldn't play them that well. But yeah, it's like to what end when it's like doesn't resemble it in the slightest as far as pacing, tone, nothing.
Well, because like in the first one, you look at those movies, like at no point in the first movie you're literally by yourself throughout the entire gameplay. You're by yourself.
You run into other characters.
You'd have
in
like
there, but-
short, maybe cutscenes with other characters, or like in boss battle they were just kind of stationary there. But it's like, what point did any of that? It's like have to do with anything? Because you have the umbrella. Because it's kind of like they took. Because I'm trying to think, movie probably came out around the time that 3 of them had been released. So I'm trying to think, it was like what 99 or 2000.
I mean, probably Code Veronica.
Yeah, Code Veronica was probably out by then. So it might have been 4 because that came out after.
I mean,
3,
when you look
right?
at the production schedules, they at least had Resident Evil like 1 through 3 out.
Yeah.
Four came out 2004, so 4 was a little bit later.
Yeah. So they kind of took ideas from all of them and then kind of put them together and then just made and I got no issue with, like you said, sometimes making original characters make sense because it kind of because like
It frees you up from mythology and lets you just build stuff around organic story.
But to do it the way they did it, it was just because they gave you enough of Resident Evil lore to make you kind of happy, but they didn't go full blown.
But yeah, it was weird because it starts out in a mansion,
Yeah.
but you don't get the setting or the characters.
Yeah,
and that was the thing.
you
Really,
very
the only thing
quickly
you got was like a
abandoned-
liquor
Yeah.
and zombies.
And you got
basically.
kind of then remember the beginning of the end of the second or the first one they had the Nemesis.
Well, yeah,
the Nemesis project.
and the second one they tried to follow up on that. I didn't mind the first one when I saw it in theaters. I was like, okay, this is not what I wanted out of one, but there was enough good set pieces in that. When I was like whatever age that came out, like I was like, okay, cool.
But I was like,
Because when that movie came
Dude,
out,
get sliced up, like there was enough in there for me to enjoy it.
because the movie came out when I was not 17 yet. Because I remember trying to sneak into the theater because we went to the theater. They were checking IDs, and I thought maybe their math wouldn't be very good because I was like 2 months away from turning 17 to get R-rated tickets. And they looked at I think it was like I was less than a month short or 2 months short of being 17. And then I just gave my driver's license, and they just kind of looked at it for a second. Wait a minute, you're not 17. I was like, but I drove here. Like, I could drive my car to the front door. Then they're like, sorry, can't
Of
sell
all
it.
films, too. I mean, I guess they were the rules are rules, but like that is not a mature film.
So then, so then what we did was bought tickets to John Q. And then tried to sneak into the Resident Evil theater, but they had somebody at the door checking IDs and tickets.
Yeah, see, I don't do that in movies.
So
at all.
then we just went and watched John Q. And ironically, I think in my perspective, John Q is a better movie than Resident Evil.
My parents just took us and dropped us off and bought all our tickets. Because like if you had like one parent, you could buy whatever. Dixie doesn't, so she just bought like a bunch or paid for a bunch of tickets.
I remember doing that for Jackass or something.
It's just funny because like I don't remember the last time I went to a theater and they actually checked my tickets at the door. Like they
I
don't
think
do
it's
that.
only. I mean, now they have it.
They don't do that.
I mean, I guess
Well,
they
if they
may
have
have.
assigned seating, and then if it's full, then
Yeah, because it's
people
true. Because a lot of your movies now for the big releases are assigned seating, so it wouldn't really be possible to sneak in. But yeah, so they're working on rebooting it. They said Resident Evil's more of or Resident Evil 7 is more of the blueprint. I just don't understand. Like the first movie and the first 2 games make pretty easy adaptations into pretty good zombie movies.
I love the first games, and I would like to see them do that more faithfully, just because of
But they
the
probably
nostalgia
won't.
and everything. But the Resident Evil 7, I know you got it. You haven't played it yet.
Yeah.
But that also makes for an easy story. Like basically, the conceit is, somebody's girlfriend's lost in this place and he goes to find her. It's like there's already a goal with that. Kind of like Silent Hill, like, somebody's missing, I need to go find them. And that gives you it gets a reason for the character to stay there and not just leave the location.
I guess the only issue I have with like Resident Evil 7 is like, which I love that game by the way, but it's just like I don't know if that's like you're rebooting the franchise and you're deciding to start with that. Then to me it doesn't make a lot of sense because there's so much lore that I don't understand how they would do that effectively. Would that be like the start of the franchise and this is the start of everything? Or are they going to go in like all that other
Come in
stuff?
the middle of the story.
Or is like all that stuff already happened and it's just going to be kind of talked about vaguely and referenced like kind of like it was in the game. So it's like, if that's the only issue you have, because if you're going to try to sell people in that movie, you might lose potential people because it's like, I don't know what's going on with this.
With any of these projects, oftentimes people are attached and things are in development and it doesn't actually get to production.
Yeah.
Because, with the Resident Evil, the original series, George Romero did a draft of a script that I had read at some point back in the past.
The only thing I could say, though, is that franchises made so much money, I would think they would, and they obviously weren't picky about the direction of it going. I think if they get a decently solid script, most... I guess it's Sony probably is still producing this. I'm sure they're probably like, just go for it. Come in a lower budget. We already have a franchise name as far as not even the games, just the movies, and you can go for it. And then, so Paul W.S. Anderson, again, another Capcom property, he is doing Monster Hunter with his wife, again, with that.
Yeah, Mila Jovovich.
Yeah,
Why do they
so
keep giving him movies?
look how much money he made for them.
Yeah, but it's
for
like-
Capcom and for Sony.
But the funny thing is, like, the only reason why he made so much money is because he kept making them. Like, none of them themselves were, like, big hits. Because, like,
Yeah, but-
in today's terms, you're talking, like, they were making maybe $50 million to $100 million profit.
yeah,
maybe.
but I mean, it's it was a safe bet to make a little bit of money. You know what I mean?
I
Like,
think the bad thing about that, though, is like, when you give him these properties and you make schlocky films, then that hurts. And you look at video game franchises as a whole, as they've went to movies, they're all schlocky. Like, you can't really... I mean, maybe I can't think of one, but...
the movies?
Just any movie based off a video game.
I think they try to make that Tomb Raider a little classier than the new one. I haven't seen that.
I haven't seen
That's
it
on
either.
HBO.
But it's just
to
like they
watch.
all tend to be schlocky. So if you continue to give a schlock director stuff like that, then I think that could hurt potential other
Well,
franchises.
I think you have
You
kind
got
of...
Vote Roberts or whatever.
Yeah, Jordan Vogt Roberts. that was working on Metal Gear
I think
Solid.
he is attempting to do some video game stuff. That new series, I don't know if he's directing or
About,
some
like
of it.
the Sega versus Nintendo. or
Yeah, like
something.
I listen to a lot of like game stuff and everything, and I've like so many stories and the history behind that. I listen to Retronauts a lot. I'm like, even just the way they acquired Tetris and the drama behind that, and people that had the rights and thought they had the rights and didn't have the rights, like all that stuff would be fascinating, like, as a film or TV show. So, I mean, there's just so much there to mine. So I really hope this show turns out well, and because that was something I was like, man, I would love to write something and do something like that, because there's an audience for it. It's not a huge audience, but when it's something like that, but man, I hope it turns out well, because there's so many great stories in the industry like that.
The thing that I think is kind of that will tell us more because, like, you get like because you have this change in subject a little bit. It's off kilter from Resident Evil, but you have a Mario Brothers movie in production with I think the same people who did Minions and that type.
Yeah.
And then you also have the Detective Pikachu movie coming out.
Yeah.
Now those two come out and they're massive successes. Well, that kind of changed the landscape for that, because
I
that
think,
shows
too,
that if you can put money and a budget behind it and it makes a lot of money, then are you going? Because like Assassin's Creed was right, like I don't think you saw.
I think with that, I think a lot of it is they might see that, like the Pikachu movie, it's taking a video game character or property and then not adapting it literally. Adapting it kind of sideways, like not doing an adaptation of an existing game story.
Yeah,
but
I
just
don't know
taking
how
it-
the story is, but there is a Detective Pikachu game.
Yeah, there is a Detective.
That is a
Oh,
game.
well, I haven't put- I mean, but,
yeah, but
no,
I
they
don't
have
know
like
how close the story is.
Well, like I don't think any of them had like, because in that Pikachu movie, Ryan Reynolds is
Yes,
going to voice
yeah.
Pikachu. I'm not
Yeah,
sure that
it's
any of
just
them
a
did
jumping
something
off
like
point.
that. But yeah, I mean, so with the Resident Evil, it's just I would, regardless of what they do, I think that can make a great like limited run series on Netflix and take a from Haunting of Hill House, just make a big ass mansion set and you can make it for pretty low cost, because people forget like a lot of the charm of the original Resident Evil wasn't just zombies, it was the other monsters. You had like the big snake and the crows.
And some of it was just the ambiance. It wasn't even necessarily the zombie. You just walk in, and again, it kind of goes to like the weird angles and just the way everything is set up. But a lot of times, just the going through the mansion in itself was creepy. So you can have maybe not, and it's
a different experience between controlling character and watching it too for certain audience members. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I still think you could create a really good ambiance of just kind of replicating that.
Yeah.
Haggard Mansion and having them,
Haggard Mansion.
Capcom's getting the guy that produced and did the Netflix Castlevania series, which is Konami, but he's doing a Devil May Cry one now. which there was already been a Devil May Cry anime and stuff, which I watched. I thought was pretty good. It was at least the stuff I've seen from it. Capcom, they've got a couple properties right now, so I, be curious to see if they keep going with this and get bigger in there. Let's get a big budget Mega Man movie.
Yeah,
let's see.
Especially if you see Mario coming out and doing good.
Yeah.
'Cause see, I think Mega Man to me would work better animated. I think.
Yeah. Like, I think I would like a very specific, like some sort of really awesome style. Like, I don't want it to look like a Minions movie.
No,
or
like
style,
Mega Man.
or we're super realistic. I want them to do something weird with that. You know what I mean? Just
Well, I don't think of Mega Man. I kind of always think of Astro Boy a little bit. And they're probably, I'm sure, Astro Boy maybe influenced Mega Man some.
Yeah.
But like that kind of art style, I think would be really cool to see Mega Man in.
yeah.
Let's see. So the screenwriter for the Resident Evil reboot that's in production is Greg Russo, and he's the one that talked about Resident Evil 7 being a touchstone for the current draft.
Is he the Black Sheep Russo brother?
And then James Wan was previously, like a couple years ago, they said James Wan was attached to reboot the property.
Yeah, see, I would love that.
But there was no mention of that with this recent stuff, so it's not known if he's still involved or if that's dead.
I would
if he is
assume
involved.
not if his name wasn't on there, considering his train just keeps rolling. So, Strangers Prey at Night, real quick, William. You weren't like super big into it. There was one sequence you kind of liked, right?
Yeah, there was a cool sequence with like a pool, but I mean, and it had like a set to music and stuff like that. The movie as a whole just had characters that, I mean, like a lot of movies where the characters are just kind of like maddeningly stupid.
Yeah.
And they go out and do things that you wouldn't do. And it was very much a straightforward kind of throwback slasher. I mean, it was in modern-ish day because they had cell phones. I think it may have been like pretty soon after the last movie happened, so it may have still been set like. That shows you how much I remember, but like, it
didn't leave a great impression.
But it was contemporary. It wasn't, but if you could have released that, if you take the cell phones out of account, that movie could have been released in the 80s and it would have been just fine. So,
and it's on Prime now. And I've a lot of people I've seen, though, have been excited about this Resident Evil news because they seem to have really enjoyed Strangers Prey at Night. I don't know if they're championing it more because it was kind of performed quietly. You know what I mean?
It was like a little bit lower budgeted.
Yeah.
Compared to like a Resident Evil franchise film, is more of a moderately budget movie that was actually shot mostly in northern Kentucky and Cincinnati, so close to the local people here. And I actually one of Julie's friends was in the movie at the end. As like a character, and I actually, when we were at a wedding recently, she was there, and I was like, "Oh yeah, you're in Strangers." She's like, "Yeah."
Did you get her autograph?
No, I
didn't say. I gave the movie a bad review on the podcast.
It was bad.
No, well, she was, but yeah. So the Resident Evil news,
I'm gonna watch it now that it's on Prime, only because we're doing the end of the year stuff coming up.
Yeah.
Not that I get most disappointing for me because I was not like excited for it, but just if we want to round out things, like hey, if we do we could do a category now that's probably best slasher with there's been a few.
There's
of
been
them.
enough.
Yeah.
Just real quick before I forget, like with something like Overlord that just came out. If they made a Resident Evil film that was slightly like, because in the original game the point was they went to the mansion to investigate disappearances of people in the town. So that's kind of like your driving point. Like, okay, people are going missing, weird murders are happening. It's all kind of stemming from this area. Let's go check it out. So it could be something like Overlord, because that was originally like Clock Tower. Because like I get too much in story, but they had disabled a clock tower that was jamming the radios. So I think you could do something like that, but then also be. Because to me, that's kind of like the prototype I look at. It's like if you want a successful Resident Evil film,
tone-wise, I think tone-wise that's an important thing.
And
Overlord struck a really good tone of being serious,
from the beginning,
not schlocky, but having the fun schlocky stuff in it, and it all blending and
because
working well.
To me, they all kind of, because I don't want to get too much into spoilers on it, but there's kind of like an Albert Wesker type character in that.
Yeah,
and it's like, to me, if I'm looking at a prototype of a film where I can say, hey, I can do this, but better. You take that prototype, turn that into a Resident Evil film, and then give
it to those guys.
Yeah, really.
No shade on whoever's got it now because I haven't seen any of their films, but yeah, I'm excited that they're doing another Resident Evil. Like, go for it. Keep making those until there's ones that one for everybody because some people really love that other franchise.
And one for you. And
exactly.
One for
let's do it.
Like,
I remember I saw the final one in theaters.
Yeah,
because it was before I had my daughter, and it was like January,
committed.
and I was like. Screw it, let's do it.
Yeah.
But I hadn't seen the last 3 or something like that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny.
I think I tried to catch up though.
I tried to watch Silent Hill Revelations.
It's not a great
the
one.
second one? Is there
I'm
only
Sean
two?
Bean. Yeah, there's
Okay.
two of them. There's
I'm
6
Sean
years
Bean.
apart. There's 6 years.
Nah.
There's 6 years apart. The first one I don't remember being bad. I need to go back.
remember,
and
Well, the
watch
second
it.
one kind of abandons the story of the prior one because they're kind of different characters, if I remember correctly.
No, I mean, no. Sean Bean is in the first and second.
Yeah, but he plays a
and-
different character
no,
kind of in the
he's the
second.
same character.
I thought he was the girl's dad.
Yes, but he's also the woman's husband.
But
That
like,
was in the first.
it's just, it was confusing and the continuity
Yes.
didn't match. And it
didn't
had Jon
match.
Snow in it.
And it had Jon Snow. He's like, I'm Jon Snow, and he's like tied up to a bench, and there's shit happening. But I just tried to watch it, and it's like, God,
But
that's
see,
not good.
Silent Hill is one of the game adaptations that stuck pretty close to the core concept.
The original.
Did we
yeah.
go see the theater and see that, William? I went with a group.
I remember
You
there being
went
there
with-
with the group
you
because
went
one
with
friend was
Kyle
laughing during the barbed wire portion.
Yeah.
You know what? I think I was sitting next to Kyle, maybe.
Yeah, because he was like, I
Because
remember
I was
the
like,
story of him
dude,
laughing.
quit laughing.
Yes,
People
I
are
think
looking at you.
we all went together. I was such a big group, I couldn't remember who went.
But I remember that being.
That's the last time I watched
maybe
that
if I
movie.
rewatch it, I'll be like, oh no, it's not good. But I remember
I've watched it on a streaming service in the past 3 years. There's some, cool elements to it. Doesn't it? I mean, it's not like a guarantee. It's not like a must watch or anything.
But I remember it being much closer to the source material than like say Resident Evil
Yeah.
was.
Yeah, but I mean
That's not saying much because there's like motorcycles flipping dogs' heads off, but yeah.
Yeah, so I guess we can, since we're recording these 2 episodes back to back, we can go into the movie and do some what we've been watching on the next episode.
Sounds good to me.
Because we were talking about Body Doubles. So it's the 84 De Palma film. So he has a bunch of different movies, but this isn't, Carrie, which is the Stephen King adaptation. I don't think we'd cover Scarface because that's just Al Pacino snorting coke.
I like that movie.
Oh,
There's a huge
so I
cult
think-
around it, but I like
Yes.
that movie.
Well, especially when I was like in middle and high school, that was just like the movie everybody talked about. Everybody had T-shirts, Vans.
But I think
and the De Palma documentary talks about like he didn't even realize, but yeah, around that era, he was like for some reason it got really big in the hip hop community.
Yeah.
and they show some of the songs. He's like in some record studio came to me and was like they want to do a rescore the whole movie with like hip hop music, and he was like, absolutely not. But you had Vice City, and like he didn't understand it, but like that had a whole nother life, like in the late '90s or early 2000s or so. It just like
because I
blew
remember
up.
like a lot of rappers. I mean, it was rap, and it was also people who were into all kinds of different
like
cultural
Fred Durst
elements.
is probably-
Yeah.
But I just remember like a lot of like iconography from rap music having things from Scarface in it.
and it wasn't like a cautionary way. It was more of a idolizing.
Yeah,
and which is not the
celebratory,
point. And I think
Tony
that's what he was like.
Montana.
No, like everybody's idolizing Tony Montana, and that's not the point of the movie.
Yeah, so there was like a huge cultural revitalization of that, and then what was the one we were initially going to do for this when we changed it?
Dress to Kill, which
Yeah.
I think is a better film from my memory. I've watched this more because I don't own Dress to Kill. This one I had just bought on digital.
Yeah.
So I've watched this one more, but Dress to Kill I think is a better, more satisfying film probably. But it was made, prior to Scarface 70s. I'm not saying it's slow, but minor spoilers for this film. It doesn't have like a giant drill going through somebody. Frankie goes a Hollywood music video basically in the middle. You know what I mean?
Relax.
It doesn't
Go
have those
to
like
it.
strong 80s elements. Even though I think it is a better film, but this is kind of a little bit more fun, maybe.
Yeah, so we'll be discussing this. I guess we'll hold like the big spoilers for the end because this is a movie that if you haven't seen it, there are some elements you don't want to know going into it.
Yeah, it is a mystery.
Because it is a mystery. So, the basic synopsis is that our main character is an actor who's having relationship problems, and he gets offered by a new friend to stay at his place while he's on vacation. And while there, he gets to watch a woman, and he becomes concerned when he sees someone else watching the woman.
Yeah, his friend is like, hey, man, this lady puts on a show. She pleasures herself every night like clockwork, and it's one of those big old mansions on the side of a hill. I think they probably have a similar one in Charlie's Angels. I don't know if it's the exact same one. This one looked like it was fake from the exterior, but also, too, another thing, which is kind of drawn off the other films that this is inspired by, was the main character also is claustrophobic. So it opens
with him
early
in a
on
vampire movie.
with him in a coffin, and he freezes up because of his claustrophobia. And the movie he's doing is Vampire's Kiss,
Yeah.
which is the name of the Nick Cage vampire film they made in the 90s.
Let's see. Yeah, and so your cast. So is your main as Jake Scully? Because I was like in my head because yesterday I was talking about Avatar for some reason. So it was like Jake Sully. But no, Jake Scully is your main character, which is Craig Wasson.
Who was in Nightmare on Elm Street 3.
And then Melanie Griffith was Holly Body. So it's like, Melanie Griffith. And then you have different people in here. You've seen a bunch of stuff like Dennis Franz, who's like a film director in the movie. And then you kind of have a blink and you'll miss it Barbara Crampton appearance because she is the nude girlfriend, like that one quick scene. I was looking through the list beforehand. I was like, Barbara Crampton. And I was like, oh, I guess that was just her thing back then. It was some of the stuff. So some familiar faces that you'll see in it. And
so this film is a blend of, there's a long walk in it where he's following a girl. That is definitely like, there's a scene from Dressed to Kill.
Greg Henry is in it as Sam.
Yes, yeah. So it's basically a blend of Dressed to Kill, Vertigo, kind of with the one, obsession about a woman, and two, the I guess phobia. Instead of it being heights, it's enclosed spaces. And then why am I drawing a blank all of a sudden?
When you said Vertigo, I thought of the Sylvester Stallone movie where they're
Over the Top.
No, not Over the Top. It's where he's got John Lithgow's the bad guy.
Oh,
They're fighting.
Yes,
Cliffhanger.
Yes, yeah.
Why do I always every time somebody's referenced Vertigo, I'm thinking of Cliffhanger.
No, definitely not the same.
I know.
Film. Have you seen Vertigo? Hitchcock's Vertigo.
Yeah,
okay.
But I always I don't know why. I was like, what? Sylvester Stallone wasn't about a woman. What? John Lithgow, and it's got the guy from all the crap.
But James Stewart.
Yeah. Rear Window is the other one I was thinking of. Rear Window, like it takes these obvious elements from these other films that is like ripped right off of it, but he's always, very self-aware of that, and he will openly talk about it because that's what he loves to do is to, much like Tarantino will take something. I think De Palma likes to do it to experiment with form and to kind of, for himself to like, let me try to replicate that or have fun with it or see how I can do it differently. But he also, like I said, he's very open about it. Tarantino, he'll talk about the movies he loves, but, I wasn't until a little bit older till I realized, Reservoir Dogs was a loose remake, or inspired by another film.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, Tarantino isn't as open. He may talk about the films he loves, but De Palma is like, I was just trying to do this scene from this movie,
Yeah.
And I kind of love that because it's like a filmmaker's
upfront with your influences.
Yeah, it's a little bit different because it's kind of one of those things where it's kind of refreshing sometimes to hear somebody like, yeah, this is what I was trying to do.
Yes,
I really enjoyed this, so I want to do my take or my version of it. Whereas it's not veiled in some type of secrecy. It's like, no, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and what I love about him is he's like, he is somebody who is excited about filmmaking. He experiments with it, and he it's a lot of visual experimentation too. So it's a lot of popcorn entertainment too, because he does a lot of visual storytelling. He always tries to do something interesting with the camera. He really tries to build up drama, and I think has a strong focus on building drama just through visuals and certain scenes. I mean, the Mission Impossible scene, apparently he came up with that whole sequence of, the wire and hanging and the sweat dripping and all that stuff. Like, he thinks about these visual elements, and in that documentary he brings up to Noah Baumbach. He's like, the way you people make films, I'm guessing he's talking about him as far as an indie filmmaker that, does a lot of character pieces, a lot of character focused stuff. He's like, you think about the characters and go from the outside. He's like, I think about the interesting ideas or scenes, and then I just fill it in with characters to ground it, So, I don't know. That's why I love De Palma, just because there's always, even if certain films aren't the greatest, usually there's at least one or two really interesting things, or you can see him trying, experimenting things. And the reason I wanted to start with Dressed to Kill, just because this has elements of Dressed to Kill in it. It's kind of fun to start at the early parts of his career, and kind of work your way through just to see how he's changes. Some things he's repeated. The beginning of Blowout, he kind of pokes fun at like slashers and some of the stuff he has done before too. So he's somebody I think it's really fun to like follow his filmography. But again, this is a fun, just 80s film that has a little bit of pop to it, I think.
Yeah, because so you have the element of like the guy watching the girl in the the apartment or house or whatever across from him through a telescope, and the movie So that element to it feels a little bit seedier now than it probably did at the time.
I don't know.
I mean, at the time, though, even in the movie, other characters react to him. It's like, here's what you were doing, perv.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Even in the movie, they call out, like, you freaking voyeur, blah, blah, blah. But, like, in today's...
I think he wants to implicate the audience because you're also like, oh, I'm watching this naked girl. You know what I mean? Like, I think that was the point, which I think is interesting. And he really does do, like, really does do R-rated Hitchcock sequences. You know what I mean? Like Hitchcock didn't put in a fully naked woman or like the over-the-top violence, and I think that's also what's interesting.
Yeah, because
about him.
So you have the Jake Scully watching this and then trying to intervene and make sure that this other person doesn't do something because he sees this kind of creepy looking person, and you have where that goes, and then it diverges off, and at some point he's in a porn production office and all this stuff. So you go from this kind of because I think this voyeuristic side of it does make you feel a little bit gross because you're watching along with him, and a lot of movies tend to do that. Because I was trying to think of like other movies that made me like 8mm, the Nick Cage movie where it's about like the snuff film and stuff. Like that one makes you feel seedy. So like just movies that make you... I think
the original Old Boy, I haven't seen the remake, but it implicates you as well.
Yeah.
Based on the way it, the film develops. But yeah, this does the same thing. Like, and also, I mean, he's watching this woman. That's an invasion of privacy. But you also see how he tumbles down this path because once he's led to start watching her, then he sees... He spots her getting on the street, and then he sees somebody following her.
Yeah,
and then he's afraid for her safety as well too. It's not like he's just he's just not straight up stalking her, but he is already down that path of doing something creepy.
Yeah,
and I think that's what I love about the film is that kind of steamrolls because he gets wrapped up into it based on doing something he probably shouldn't have been doing. I mean, that's like the sin of the film. Like he's being a voyeur, and because of that, he falls into this hole of this of the woman being stalked, and then he gets kind of wrapped up in it, and then you have the whole sequence of him following her, and minor spoilers, he's like at a mall watching her and being creepy there, even though he's doing it for her safety, but then also he's also being a little creepy. Like that's what I love. There's always a balance going back and forth.
Because there's the leer.
Yeah, but if you ever got caught and like had to explain it, it would sound so
Yes.
bad. Like obviously this person.
And two, I do like that. Like even in the mall sequence, people come out I was like, I think we have a problem here. And then so it's in the movie itself is commenting on the fact that he's doing this and it's concerning people. And then, like I said, as the viewer, you're sitting there watching it too. And if he doesn't continue doing it, there's no movie. So, the action keeps moving forward. And it's like, well, how, commenting on him doing it, well, we're watching as the audience. What does that say about us? So I do like elements like that in movies because I feel like he's
not a complete creep. It's not like he's,
he's not like sitting there like jerking off. And
well, I'm sure he probably did. But I'm saying like he gets led to this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He is not some guy that is like running around a neighborhood with binoculars trying to find a woman.
He
wasn't.
it's
just right there in front of him, and he's like,
Yeah, I mean, because there's been times before that...
confession time.
I was trying to remember. So one of my old apartments, the one that was the big place, like the multi-story house where you had like a bunch of parties, like right after college... Which is a shame that that I wasn't doing as much filmmaking stuff back then because that house would have been perfect because it was this huge ass 100+ house, all these rooms like
sliding doors on the inside. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, it would have been perfect for like a ghost story or something. But I mean, it was the type of place that you could have like a scream killer killing somebody that other people at the same party didn't realize it was going on.
Yeah.
But
really high lifted ceilings, gigantic rooms.
Yeah, because my bedroom at that place was like 400 and 400 to 500 square feet, and I had like a full wall length closet. But also the ceiling fell in once, and it was $460 utility bill in the winter, almost 10 years ago. But what was the point?
Maybe you're talking about voyeurism.
Oh, but like, so the way I think in our second floor, you could see into the other house or something, and there's like a window, and it wasn't anybody who was ever sitting there like making it a point to pay attention, but sometimes like you could see like somebody walk over there and like do stuff like in this room in front of the window, and like they could have easily put up a curtain, which we on our stuff we did.
Yeah.
But then it's just one of those things where even if you're not intending to sit there and watch something, if you're in this room and you see something that catches your attention, you will watch, and then at a certain point, most decent people stop themselves. They feel like there's gonna be anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think naturally humans are interested in watching. You know, even if you're just people watching in the mall. You know, like I think they just but there's also something invasive about it when you're watching somebody in their home. Like I don't know, I just think that's an interesting thing. But then obviously, you know, she is not just kind of walking around her house, and she's not even just naked. You know what I mean? Like she's feeling on herself and everything. So, so I would say there would be a lot of guys that would watch. You know what I mean? Like I'm not saying it's morally right, but a lot of guys would watch that, and that's what I think is interesting about it, is they put him in the position where a lot of the audience is like, well, you know what I mean?
Well, it's kind of funny because if you remember from Seinfeld, there's an episode where they have a naked woman across the street, and they all watch.
When he was saying that to Friends, that was a whole thing. There was a guy, and they always watched him. You know what I mean? Like it's just
the naked guy.
It's a human. For some reason, it's just something humans like to do.
Because I know plenty of men and women who would watch, you know, or like be interested to see.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't think people would go.
When you have a telescope, that's one thing.
Yeah,
I'm taking a little bit
that
far.
is different. That is different than simply like you're sitting in the kitchen and you can see someone through the window, and you're like, oh,
you know. But it's the whole thing with Rear Window too. You know, he was just, you know, he's sitting there, he has nothing else to do, and he's being a voyeur. You know, and should he have been? No, probably not. But then he gets wrapped up in this whole mystery as well. Like you know, that's that will forever be a fascinating thing, I think, is people's tendency to be voyeuristic, even if it's not like a really, you know, nasty way, but still, it's still an invasion.
Well, just for example, like if you live in your house and a couple houses down are having a huge argument in the front yard.
Yeah.
You might.
Well, when we were,
just kind of watch.
When we were shooting we were doing this short film ride. On my neighborhood, a couple houses down, the couple in the house was having a big blowout argument while we were shooting. Yeah. And so then, like, one of them left and walked down the street, and then the other one left in their car and drove up and down the street a bunch and was doing all this stuff.
They were very dramatic about it.
Yeah.
Too, to put it lightly.
Like burning out and driving down the street and then asking us, like, have you seen her? Blah, blah, blah. And we were just like, don't get the cops called to make it or we can't finish shooting. Yeah. And then, like, the lady yelled at us or yelled at people because, like, I guess she thought that we were watching them. It's like, no, we literally have, like, we're shooting a short film and people are sitting here because they're shooting right there. We're not watching your going ons.
Yeah, your going ons are coming into what we're doing.
We're trying to avoid it. Yeah. But yeah, so like
we got cameras out filming this entire thing to send in the cops.
Yeah, bad boys. But yeah, so like Body Double, you have the element of, you know, slight mysteries. It grows into more of a mystery as you go along.
And I don't think the mystery is the strongest part of this. It's fine. It's a conceit there for a lot of things that happen. And again, for him to play with certain scenes and construct certain, like, just fun scenes of the film. It's not the greatest mystery ever. It's not on, you know, some of Hitchcock's best or like even his best. But I also think the resolution is fun in and of itself.
Yeah, because the basic idea of this woman's being stalked and you don't know by who or why. Now, some of this when I was watching it, just watching the movie unfold, some of us like, okay, I think I kind of get an idea of what this is. Mm-hmm. I mean, go that into spoilers, but you know,
did you figure it out?
I was pretty sure.
Pretty close, yeah.
And even if I didn't know exactly who something was, I knew what was going on.
Yes, yeah.
Just because of the way it looked. So there's some elements of stuff like that where...
And I think they try to lead you down that path, too. You know, they want you to kind of slowly figure out things maybe, or know something's not right.
Well, there's another movie that is almost identical to this. It's from the 80s, and I cannot think of the name of it, because I'd watched this, you know, and then I remember that movie. And it was actually on, I think they had posted a picture on it. I follow the Instagram page, I think you do too, Anti-CGI. You know
I don't know, maybe.
And he had posted something from that movie, and they're very similar.
So what elements are similar?
The entire plot. Like, it's like a guy that is a failed actor who can't act, so he gets a prostitute, and then, like, he kind of watches her get murdered. It's very similar. And, like, the end of the movie... It's almost exactly the same. So if I can find the name of that movie, I'll look at them in.
But yes,
they're very identical. But this movie came out before.
But yeah, so you know, this movie also has like stylistic flourishes, like a big wide shot of people walking, just some like stylistic things that kind of
split diopter. You know, I don't think he does any split screen in this. He almost does split screen in camera with like a certain shot. You know, split screen was like, you know, a huge staple of his.
Yeah, stylistic calling card.
But I don't think he does any actual split screens, but he does a somewhat split screen, and there's like in the I guess the porn set scene.
Yeah.
When they pull a mirror, pull a door, so you're seeing in a mirror and seeing his reaction. So it's kind of a split screen, and and then the door closes and you see, there's the film cameras because to make sure like, hey, this is the music, this is a video they're shooting. But it's funny because I'm like, okay, was that supposed to be an extra camera on set, or is he saying that the people who are shooting the porn are too untalented to find this shot, to find this good shot? But then later, what's his name? Scully?
Yeah, Jake Scully.
Scully even says like, "Oh, did you like that shot? I came up with it."
Yeah.
So that's like De Palma being like, "Oh yeah, did you like that shot?"
Yeah, and then like if you're not like a diopter is a thing on the lens where you can have stuff that's in focus in the foreground and the background. So this gives you kind of cool.
And that also is sort of a split screen sometimes because he said he can't. He wanted to use that because like, how do I do a split screen in camera where basically your eyes can be focused on two different things at two different focal lengths, and it appears to be two different shots sometimes.
Yeah, because and sometimes in movies I've seen recently or people, it's hard to tell if they're actually using a diopter on the camera or if they're trying to do some weird compositing type stuff and the editing.
Yeah, I've been wanting to buy one to play with that.
Yeah, I mean, because I was looking at some for like anamorphic lenses. Sometimes you need a diopter to help it focus, but. Yeah, so cool, just kind of like small stylistic flourishes you might not even catch if that's not the type of stuff you look for to begin with. But yeah, like the movie had enough, visual flair and things going on that it was interesting to watch. And then you kind of have like the WTF type moments throughout the movie. You're like, what's going on here?
I almost thought you were going to say WWF moments. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, it's got the Ultimate Warrior or something. But yeah, so I think that the movie, all like these stylistic elements in the story and the fact that, a lot of movies are the filmmaker, movies about filmmaking to some extent.
Yes,
and this movie does have some of that in it, especially more towards the end, in the beginning. And sometimes that stuff is fun. It's a nice look at like, oh, this is how you perceive it to be. Or it's, oh, this is a reflexive in-joke that is self-aggrandizing and not really... But this one, I think it falls more into the kind of, more fun side of, here's how it could seem to some people.
But also, too, it does seem like he's making the film for himself a lot as well.
Yeah.
Like, hey, this is the stuff I think's funny and the stuff I want to, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to say he's selfish, but he very much kind of likes to complete his own vision and doesn't... I almost feel like he doesn't care if people are offended or don't feel included. You know what I mean? I'm not saying he doesn't want to feel inclusive, but, again, like this had a lot of issues with, the violence and the violence against women and stuff.
Yeah.
But he was just like, hey, this is just what I want to do. This is what it is,
Because there is, like just to kind of like, before we get into spoilers, it's like that. So the things you can't expect from the movie, there is some violence. There is, some more implied than specifically shown on screen type stuff, but
what's implied is also can be very violent.
Yeah, what's implied is pretty rough. But I think that the way that it's implied is better than outright showing it.
Yeah,
because if you compare some of the scenes from this movie to say like the 2003 Texas Chainsaw Massacre, just showing it repeatedly just kind of makes it an exhausting experience to me, not in a great way, because okay, this person is just getting a hook in their back and they're getting this chopped off and, oh, this is gross.
Choppy.
As opposed to building up the tension of, oh, will this or will this not happen? To me, it builds a little more tension and makes it more suspenseful and actually gets a bigger reaction if something does happen, as opposed to just relentlessly showing it over and over at certain points, like, well, you don't really care. In this movie, like Jake Scully's your point of view character. He's the character that you're really kind of set up to care about.
And I think, for me, he is kind of one of the weakest links in the film. And he's fine, and he's definitely entertaining, and he makes me laugh a lot in certain scenes, especially when he's kind of playing a role as self and kind of going undercover.
Yeah.
Like just because you're seeing he's using his talents as an actor. But I think if you did have like an extremely strong leading man in this, it would have definitely elevated the
Well,
film.
and at parts he looks like a more handsome Bill Maher, which
Yeah.
is because like
Yeah.
the
That's not
part where
saying
he's
much,
wearing
though.
like the leather jacket and his hair is slicked back.
Yes,
It's like, oh,
yeah.
he looks like Bill Maher.
He's gonna go up and do open mic.
He's gonna go up and start calling by morons
Yeah.
and make a really controversial statement. And
Yeah, I mean, I like him in this too. I enjoyed him. But at the same time, I think somebody else could have possibly elevated.
well,
this
like
film.
talking about like Vertigo or something like Jimmy Stewart in that
Yeah,
type of role.
exactly.
Age appropriate like time travel work going on here.
What year did this come out in?
84.
84. So who had been an actor from 84 that would have fit into this role and maybe made it a little more?
Kurt Russell could have been funny.
Kurt Russell, yeah.
I mean, he could have been
because that would have been
But,
right.
but
in
this
his-
guy's supposed to be a little. I don't want to say puny, but a little pathetic.
Like
I think.
Christopher Walken or
Yeah, I'm trying to think of somebody that is slightly pathetic because that is this character. I mean, he's, minor spoilers. When the film opens, he walks in and his girlfriend is having sex with somebody else. He doesn't really have a place to stay, staying on his buddy's floor.
Like if-
he's an actor, but not super successful, and he's
So he's kind of a sad sack at the beginning, and that's part of the reason that he gets involved in everything he's involved
somebody
in.
that was a little too young for this, but would have fit later on, be like Michael Anthony Hall, maybe, or like I'm trying to think of somebody like that because he was obviously too young at that point. He's been like 19.
Michael
I don't know. I
Cera.
have to think about that. But
Let's do a remake and have Michael Cera as the star.
Well, I mean that would probably work.
Have you? What was that movie where he has the evil twin with the mustache?
Oh.
because he's like
Yeah.
a creep. Like that would be Michael Cera in this.
Yeah, because the Jake Scully character, so he, somebody
What about
that
David Duchovny?
Yeah, I mean David Duchovny in the '90s
Yeah.
could have done that. I mean, like part of the
David Spade.
No,
because I think part of
Adam Sandler.
I think part of the idea with Jake Scully is he's good looking enough to be an actor and all that stuff, but not so much that he's like the star and everything
Yeah.
or like undeniable star power. He's a good actor, but he's not so great that he's tearing it up. He's just kind of middling success.
And he's easily replaceable too.
Yeah. And then, you have elements like that. So, and then you kind of have the kind of killer or the stalker guy that he's dealing with who has a very unique kind of almost like James Bond bad guy look.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Don't you just love the classic James Bond bad guy?
because I was thinking it was kind of reminded me of Jaws.
Yeah.
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 And then, you have these other characters that you see come in throughout, and then it dips into like the porn world a little bit.
When you say Jaws, I wish you were referencing the shark and not the man.
But and the movie does have nudity in it, but none of it because like in some of the episodes recently I talked about like the modern like super low budget indie movie stuff where it's literally like they had no idea what they're doing or how to sell it, so they just throw boobs at the screen.
I mean,
and that stuff, it's like
There's plenty of it in there, but it's also the reason.
I was gonna say like the difference is
Yeah.
those just feel to me bad because it's like, oh, these people that are trying to make their careers acting and they're getting convinced to do all this stuff. Maybe they want to do it and it's empowering, but this end product isn't good. As opposed to watching this, and there's a lot of it. I don't really blink or think about it because it's in the context of a well-constructed, cinematically,
Yes,
theatrically shot movie by a director who knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
So a
and
huge difference.
There's a story reason for it all. Yeah.
So like whenever nudity and stuff like that is thrown in there, like that to me wasn't the seedy feeling part. The seedy feeling part was him watching someone through a telescope because the rest of it, was kind of so over the top, really that. And
a lot of times it's like fun music set to it as well.
Yeah.
Like even when he's watching like that little synth score that I love in the film, it's kind of the theme that runs throughout.
theme.
Like it makes it seem fun and not like he's not like heavy breathing into the, you know what I mean? It's
he's not like, hey girl.
yeah, it's not. I mean, it's supposed to be a little sexy, that's the
little
vibe.
sexy.
That's the vibe for that music, but it's not. I don't know.
The movie, it's playful with a
Yes,
lot of
yes.
it, and it's not going down deep, dark corridors and making you feel like you're watching a snuff film or something.
Yeah.
So I guess we can kind of give what our thoughts are and scores and move into the spoiler talk. Because like I said, this is a movie that if you're interested in watching it, go see it because a lot of movies like this, like the experience is more of what you're going after than the specific plot points.
Yeah.
But you don't want to go into it knowing how it ends and what all the behind the scenes were in the mystery because it is fun watching it unfold. Even if you can kind of see where things are going at some point, it is fun to have that then confirmed or denied.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole point of this is the mystery.
Yeah, so So Derek, where would you rate this?
I mean, I found it interesting enough. I mean, I do like a lot of De Palma's work, and like you said, like this movie kind of, like you said, it kind of, well, it was voyeuristic. Like it didn't. It had a seedy feel, but it didn't because there's mystery stuff. It was a really interesting movie, especially for. And my big thing is like stuff that came out in the '80s. Probably this ad nauseum sometimes for me is like, but it kept my interest. Like I didn't really get bored. I wasn't looking at my phone too much. So if something can keep my interest, I feel like even because something that is over 30 years old at this point, like I think that's doing a pretty good job. So I would give it like a 7.5. I really enjoyed it. I did get slightly bored during some of it, and like I feel like this movie is like this kind of general arc has been done a lot in other stuff now. So it's like maybe kind of lost. It's because obviously this was kind of a play on Rear Window, right?
Rear Window, Vertigo,
and so it's kind of like a play on that. So at this point in time, it was kind of already based off of something else. But then you have
it's well-tried territory, but bringing a slightly different
self-aware
approach.
too about it.
But then you have so much more so many other movies that have came out since then. Maybe it's kind of lost its freshness a little bit, and that's kind of where I was at with it.
I mean, and that's the thing you run with a lot of movies. And I would probably fall around a similar area on like the rating, like 7.5 to 8, like something that's enjoyable enough to watch and recommend. It's one of those things where if you haven't seen this movie, I think that's probably worth checking out if you haven't, just because like it's fun. I mean, because like we talk about like some of like the 80s slashers, they all follow this super formulaic layout, and it's all pretty standard. Some of them have like the big twist, but up to that point, they're 90% the same. As opposed to this one, even though it may be similar to a lot of other concepts, it does enough things differently that you're sitting there, just watching what's going on, because like there's kind of a musical number in it. And there's these things just kind of come out of nowhere, and you're like,
as he said, like music videos were a big thing. When movies had their own music videos, started to be a big thing. And so he said, hey, I'll just put a music video inside the film because modern audiences love that, and that's what there's a whole scene,
and then especially
basically an entire song,
especially too when it's music that has taken on a lot of cultural significance after the fact.
Yeah, true.
So when the movie came out, it's just a more contemporary, recent song that they're making. Oh, okay, let's include this in here and let's do something fun.
But it's not one that fell to the wayside. It's one
something
that's only
that grew over the years, and then now has even more built-in like mind share. And you think about it, there's more things you associate with it, and then some of the imagery in the movie even reinforces that.
Yes.
Even if I'm not sure if they were going for the intention of like what all that means today. But yeah, so there's fun moments in it, and that's the thing is like, was there something memorable from this movie that you haven't seen many other places? Yeah, I mean, it's the type of thing that the type of movie it is. Some of the stuff that shows up, you're like, oh wow. And two, though, like the way that it set up some of the porn stuff, I'm not sure. Like I didn't watch 80s porn because at the time I was a child. But I wonder if there was porn with that level of like production value and setup. And
I think there was.
fanfare.
Well, I think what it was, I don't remember where I heard this. I was watching, was it a documentary or what? But somebody was talking, or maybe it was another movie, but I think it was a film actually. Was it Boogie Nights where they talk about this a lot? This was 83. So he even goes to the store and they said, we got it on a 1/4 inch, beta, VHS. So what happened was, I think there were porns were higher productions,
and they were
when
in
things were shot on
theaters,
film. When things were shot on film, when it went to tape and VHS and things started becoming way cheaper, that's when production values went down because so many other people started producing it. So when it was harder and more expensive to produce, the production values were higher because it was more valuable.
Well, and two, there was the element of there were adult theaters you went to watch it, because back then VCRs were expensive. Because remember, like my parents saying like the first VCR they had was like $800 or $900.
Exactly. So and I'm sure those tapes were probably, who knows, $80, $100 or something.
I remember back in the day, like even towards like my childhood, sometimes movies would be like $40 sometimes on VHS, and they're not even that now in like the Criterion edition sometimes. But so Sean, what would you rate the movie?
I would probably give it about an 8 as well. That's on Vudu. After I got done with the film, I had rated it 4 out of 5 stars. I'd probably give it about an 8 or so. Like I said, it's one I kind of return to. And even though maybe some other films I would rate higher that I think are better films, this one is fun enough that I return to it more than some other ones.
Well, I think it has a lot to do with it too, because like I feel like this is something I could watch more than once.
Yeah, I just put it on because the music, you just turn it on. There's just some great scenes. Even if you're half watching it, you can turn and just watch a scene or two here that's like fun to watch in and of it by itself.
Yeah, so now we can move into spoilers. But before that, if you're listening via iTunes, you can do us a huge favor. Leave a review there. That helps other people find the podcast. We always enjoy seeing comments on YouTube. See some great feedback there. But you can also send us emails at podcast@houseofavstore.com. Find links to all of our social media accounts at houseofavstore.com. We have links to our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. We don't really use Vimeo anymore, but I think it still exists. But yeah, the main place you want to follow us are Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. You can find some of our pictures and stuff. We'll probably have some behind-the-scenes images coming out soon from the short we did a while back, They Knock, which is moving along. I'm not sure exactly when that'll be coming out.
I think Chad said maybe he wants to wait till put it out in January to have something kind of the first of the year to put out.
Well, yeah, because too much holiday stuff. Yeah,
so it'll get lost.
So something coming pretty soon. We'll have some behind-the-scenes images and stuff like that, so you can check that out. And then, like I said, so you can find everything at houseofavstore.com. And if you want to find us specifically on the internet, I'm on Instagram at the William Caps.
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at MetaWorldDerek.
I'm on Twitter at BlevinSean.
So now we'll move into our spoiler discussion for Body Double. And something I was thinking of too, so a movie I think this makes a good double bill with is Scorsese's After Hours. That kind of
I started that, but I have
movie.
not watched that film.
Completely different, you know, it's just like tonally. It feels like there was kind of this kind of off the wall stuff in both of them. But like I said, full spoilers.
You know what it reminded me of too? It's funny you said that because this reminded me of Scorsese's. Oh my gosh, why am I drawing a blank on it right now? The Robert De Niro mystery set in Florida.
Oh, Cape Fear.
Cape Fear. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. For some reason, I came across Cape Fear after watching this. I'm like, this kind of reminds, that same era
The
kind
Nick
of, and
Nolte.
just kind of the creepy, the creepy villain and everything. So
I remember the movie I was thinking about earlier, and they're not that similar, but they do remind me of each other. And it's Slam Dance, because like
seen that.
there's like some elements are the same, because like you have somebody gets murdered and it's gonna murder, and I just remember I was like, what is that? And it's like, okay, it's Slam Dance. So yeah, they're not exactly the same, but they remind me of each other.
So
chase somebody around and get panties out of a garbage can.
Probably. I just couldn't remember. I was like, okay, that's what it was. It was Slam Dance.
So the big thing that, like, in terms of like if you saw it coming or not. So the other stalker / killer, like I was like, okay, he's under heavy makeup. Is this just someone that was paid to be under makeup? And then at a certain point, you're like, oh, well, the guy kind of seemingly pulled all the strings here. The Sam character. Let the guy stay in his house, let him know that there's someone to watch, and then kind of checks in and doesn't really get too concerned when he gets completely blown off and doesn't, have any follow-up. So it's basically just him checking in to make sure his plan is working.
Yeah.
And then as it is, and
it's more satisfying because you haven't been introduced to any other really characters that could be involved in it.
And then at a certain point, you're like, okay, well, this, they're saying like the Indian as, what they're making the makeup to look like. But it's like, well, this is definitely just a person wearing a lot of prosthetics and makeup, and especially being a movie about like the Hollywood industry and stuff like that. And at a certain point, I was like, oh, okay, well, it's got to be the other guy, because that's the only thing that makes sense based on what we've seen. Otherwise, it's just characters off screen we never heard of, and that's not exciting.
Yeah,
I had also heard. I don't know. Somebody made the point somewhere that, obviously cowboys and Indians, but Native Americans were often just the villain in films.
Always.
Hollywood and westerns and stuff. And it's just this black and white, as far as they were the bad guys.
I mean, even in the Ballad of Buster Scruggs, that was kind of the case.
Yes, yeah. And so, in this too, it's like, oh, I'm going to be a Native American.
It's a false flag.
This is the bad guy.
False flag.
And it's the way Hollywood perceived him as well too. So that may have been some little intentional thing as well.
That could have been very much this is the type of character typically we would make the bad guy, but guess what? It's actually the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, white actor dude.
Yeah.
So and
there's clues too that, what's happening, like, especially if you watch it again, like when he's having her watch the performance the first time, he's even saying, "Can you see her face?"
Yeah.
And he's like, no. And it's like, okay, well, there's a reason why, because that's not, her.
It's not, it's someone in a wig.
Yeah.
So there's like the elements that, like the mystery elements. And I too like that the cop does call him all this, shit. He's like, okay, well, you were watching her.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, if this guy's stalking her, you were too. And so you have the cop kind of like laying out like, well, here's all the creepy things you're doing.
Why would we trust you? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, even like says like, then he sees the panties in his pocket and he pulls them out. He's like, well, what's this?
And I love that scene too when he's chasing her and and he's like, again, he's starting to be more voyeuristic. He's not even at that point when she's changing her or when she's trying on the underwear. It's not like he's there to protect her. Now he's just invested into watching her change in that changing room too.
Because he doesn't have to watch that. He just has to know where she's
I just
at,
love
and
that
then-
little turn there. And then also the fact that the villain has this bad makeup, again, it makes it like a slasher villain, like because it's bad makeup, it's creepier and weirder, which I like that it doesn't look just like a normal guy. Like there's just something off about him that makes him more terrifying. And again, his murder weapon, like just everything, it's very much like, hey, we have this slasher villain, but we're building a whole different type of story around it, essentially.
And then too, like the main kill is the drill through the chest, and like that is pretty gruesome. And the way they set it up, it's worse than anything they show on screen.
What was it about in the 80s where they just loved power tools killing people? Because like there's a bunch of films in the 80s where
I think it's just escalation because you use a knife or a machete or a butcher knife.
And that De Palma documentary, which I love, I've seen it multiple times, but I don't recommend seeing that until you watch several of his films. Like I think it spoils the end of Blowout. Just tons of his films that aren't just Scarface and Carrie. It does. I would dig into some of his filmography before watching that. Because you'll ruin some of his best films, I think, if you do, especially Dress to Kill and stuff. But he talks about that when the film came out, or at least they did the preview screening, and he got a lot of flack for, why did the drill have to be so big? And he said, well, it had to be big enough to go through the floor. Like, in his mind, that was the whole reason, to show it that way.
It could have like a little like half-inch drill big.
But,
you're not
and he's
anything.
like, and he said, like, when you're doing these things, you just think, oh, this makes totally perfect sense to me. But then somebody else sees it, and they're like, why would you ever do that? But yeah, that is a awesome kill. I think that's very memorable. That doesn't involve a prosthetic body spinning around or getting a hole right through it.
Well,
I kind of wish it was the prosthetic body getting swollen around.
The blood coming through the ceiling, I think, effectively sells what's going on in the horror of the scenario.
And the dog's attacking him, the blood's spraying down.
And there's other things too, like so, the little hints to what the actual story is. The dog doesn't attack the killer, but does attack Jake Scully when he gets in the house. So that kind of gives you a little bit of inkling of something's going on. And two, that the guy would know to snatch the purse and take the key card, or the entrance card to the house. So there's just little things throughout that kind of, you think about them in retrospect, it's like, oh, okay, well, somebody wouldn't know that she had that unless they were really intimately involved with her life. And, these different facts. Now, like something you could sit there and think about is like, well, the police, when they looked into where Jake Scully lived, when they have seen that it was something that was owned by the guy that also owned the house across the street whose wife was murdered, like, it seems like they may have looked into that a little bit more. But I mean, I guess like shell companies, or it could have just been renting it in cash, or subletting it or whatever. Because in the 80s, you probably could actually get some stuff done with cash. In today's world,
well, I'm sure.
Like most landlords would not let you pay in cash. But like back then, there was probably a lot easier ways to obscure payments.
You just Airbnb'd it.
Yeah. It's probably a lot easier to obscure the information back then than it is today. So that's kind of gives it a pass, in terms of what I was thinking about. But yeah, I mean, like, then the porn stuff and like the Freddy Goes or the Relax and all that stuff, like that was kind I crazy.
They just hit you in the face, and then all of a sudden you're like, I'm just watching this entire song play out to this sequence.
Because I'm sitting there, I was like, wait a minute, it's like, relax. I was like, oh, they're actually doing this song.
Yeah.
And then like they're singing, and it's like, is this a dream sequence? Yeah. And then there's
music video or porn. I don't know which one it is.
And then there's like the leather daddy dudes that are in there.
Leather daddy.
Or dad likes leather.
Dad likes
and then the
leather.
room that just says sluts that he goes into. And then it's like sluts this way. And then he says, I like to watch. Like, and it's he's just playing the role. I just love all that. And then he has to use his acting abilities to pretend to be a porn producer.
And then he doesn't know what a cum shot is.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like, that stuff was more fun than it was like exploitative. Really, I mean,
because in that sense, he was like playing the more innocent role,
Well, and two, he's playing the role in that point. He's using his acting ability just to. But then too, though, like at the same time, like, is he in a porn now? Is his career like? Because then at the end of the movie, once he's saved the other actress, and then figured out that the killer is actually Sam, who is her husband, and He's figured all that stuff out. Once all that comes to an end and he, stops them and gets over his fear of being in confined spaces.
And that thematic arc where he overcomes it while he's being buried alive, essentially, which I love. The film starts out with him in a coffin and it ends with him in a grave, and then it ends basically with him in a grave having to overcome that, and that's what gives him confidence for, to take the role back on.
So then he gets the movie role back because the other guy was bad, so they fired him and he gets hired back. And then the scene in the end where he's with the other actress, in the shower, and he's like, okay, keep your hand here. And they put the pole on the C-stand or whatever to hold it in place. And then it's showing, he's like, okay, well, I can't move my hand. Can you move your body to me? So all that stuff shows kind of just the way
nuts
that
and bolts and the unsexiness of it.
Yeah.
It's, and again, that's the whole thing with the movie, using a body double. She, Holly was never naked, or not Holly, but the original victim was never naked in the film.
Yeah,
they used the body double to do the nudity, and that's what the whole end of the film is we're putting in a body double to do the nudity in the scene I'm shooting.
Yeah, so that, I thought that was a nice touch, and just showed like you said, how those scenes that may be super erotic on screen, because Holly's even telling her, you'll get a lot of dates after this.
Yeah, and the woman's like, okay, be careful, my breasts are tender, I'm on my period,
Yeah, she's like, I got my period. Yeah.
So I think De Palma is trying to be like, hey, look, this is we're all putting on a show here. I know it seems sexy, but we're telling a story.
Yeah.
It's very mechanical, the whole thing.
Yeah, so fun moments.
I love this movie. It's
fun moments.
Yeah, the mystery, and I think the lead actor is fine enough. The mystery's good enough. And the sequences are fun enough that I think it's a great film, but also, not the best mystery.
So what you're saying is the movie would have been better if it starred Dennis Miller.
God,
I thought you were going to say Dennis Rodman.
No,
that'd be even weirder.
Because Dennis Miller was in Bordello Blood, wasn't he?
What about Chris Farley?
Oh, he would have been good.
And he's watching through a telescope. He falls
He was smacking his head, sweating real bad.
The only thing is,
or Ernest, get Jim Varney.
God, that'd be
Jim Varney.
That'd be good.
Or
have we ever covered an Ernest movie?
No.
Because if you have Patrick Swayze in it back in that point in
That's
the
what
80s,
I'm trying to think.
he's
Who was
too.
kind of? Oh, who would be good? Crispin Glover. He'd been perfect.
Yeah.
This might have been a little bit early. I don't know. Yeah,
No, he would have been
perfect.
good. Yeah.
Yeah,
this
right
is a
around Back
perfect
to the
age.
Future, Friday the 13th Part 4.
Yeah. Crispin Glover would have been.
I think
he'd
he'd
been
been-
too creepy.
I think he'd been a bit too young though, because I think
that's-
the look they were going for was 30 something
Yeah.
or 40, not 20 something or teen. Because the idea was somebody that's lived a little and
Just do Paul Gleason. Mr. the Bull, you can get the horns. That's all he says in the entire movie. You know who Paul Gleason is?
From Die Hard.
He doesn't know who Paul Gleason is.
From Die Hard, yeah.
Die
He was in
Hard,
Die
Breakfast
Hard,
Club.
yeah.
Alan Rickman.
Alan
Yeah,
Rickman.
that quote's from Breakfast Club. I always say that.
Yeah. One of the guys I
such a
work
good
with
movie.
uses that quote all the time,
Yeah.
and I can't take him serious. He's like, dude, that's Paul.
Oh,
It's
he's doing it seriously?
serious.
Oh my
It's
god.
dude, that's just from Breakfast Club. I can't.
And he's the doofy principal that they're all making fun
Yeah.
of. Like,
Oh yeah.
Mr. the Bull, you gonna get the horns.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Then he just walks in. It's like,
I guess that'll wrap up our discussion of Body Double. On the next episode of the podcast, we'll be discussing Die Hard,
Nakatomi.
which is actually the Fox building, I
Yeah.
think. But Die Hard, the original Bruce Willis action film. And it's funny, that movie, all the people that turned it down, they offered it to Harrison Ford, all these different people. There's a lot of ways that movie could have turned out, but I think in terms of the way they did it, they picked the perfect person in Bruce Willis, and it really changed the trajectory of his career big time. But and we'll discuss Die Hard. Is it a Christmas movie? You can wait till the next episode to see what our opinion is. But so that'll wrap up this episode of the House Movie Store podcast. Thanks for listening.
House by the